Lisa Johnson was just 8 years old when she climbed aboard the yellow school bus for the first time in her new neighborhood. With bright eyes and a hopeful smile, she waved back at her mother Nina, who stood at the curb filled with dreams of a better life for their family. But as the bus doors shut, neither of them could have imagined the dark and disturbing path that awaited them. Mr. Miller, the bus driver with gray hair and a grandfatherly demeanor, seemed warm and welcoming, but behind that gentle smile hid something sinister, a truth so dark it would soon threaten everything Nina held dear. Days turned into weeks, and Nina couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. Her instincts screamed, yet, in a mostly white neighborhood, where Mr. Miller was considered a trusted figure, voicing her concerns risked not just disbelief, but possible backlash. Help me with a like and a subscribe to motivate me to make better videos. And don't forget to comment which country you are from. What exactly was happening on that school bus? And how far would a determined mother go to protect her child, especially when doing so might expose secrets the entire community would rather keep buried? It had all started with the promise of a fresh start. The sun filtered through the leaves of a giant oak tree as a moving truck pulled away, leaving a family of 3 on their new suburban lawn. Lisa bounced with excitement, her dark curls bouncing as she eyed the tree with curiosity. "Can we put a swing on it?" she asked, her words bursting with wonder. Nina smiled, tension easing from her face. "We'll see, honey. Maybe once we're settled." Malcolm, Lisa's father, wiped his brow and declared the last box moved. "Pizza to celebrate," he offered. As they stepped into their new home, they felt the watchful gazes from neighbors, curious, cautious. They were, as far as they could tell, the only black family on the block. Later that evening, sitting cross-legged around a cardboard box that doubled as a dinner table, Malcolm raised a slice of pizza. "To new beginnings," he said. Nina and Lisa echoed him, their slices clinking softly. Conversation flowed, hopes, dreams, the start of something better. Nina beamed about working from home as a designer. Malcolm, heading to his new job in the city, felt ready despite the commute. Lisa, her mouth full of cheese, asked nervously, "Do you think I'll make friends?" The smiles of her parents flickered briefly before Nina assured her, "Of course. You're smart and kind and funny. They'll love you." Malcolm added, "Just be yourself. That's all you need to do." As boxes were unpacked and shadows stretched across the unfamiliar walls, they laughed and dreamed and tried to believe this move was the right one. But beneath their hope ran quiet unease. Malcolm had said it during one of their late-night talks. "We're doing this for Lisa. Better schools, safer streets. She deserves every chance." Nina had agreed, yet standing in their half-empty living room, she couldn't shake a twinge of doubt. Would they be accepted here? Would Lisa thrive? As if sensing her thoughts, Lisa nestled beside her on the couch. I'm glad we're all here, she whispered, slipping her small hand into her mother's. Nina squeezed back, fiercely protective. Me too, baby. Me too. That night, while Lisa slept in her box-filled bedroom, Nina tucked her in with a kiss and a reassuring smile. Nervous, she asked. Lisa nodded. It's okay, Nina said softly. You're brave. You've got this. Lisa's smile returned, her worries fading under her mother's warmth. Down the hall, Nina found Malcolm already in bed, phone in hand. Checking your route again, she asked. Don't want to get lost on my first day, he joked. Then added, how's Lisa? Nervous but excited. Nina replied, she'll be okay. I think we will too. Malcolm pulled her close. We made the right choice. We're together. We can handle anything. As the house settled around them, creaking like it too was adjusting to new occupants, the stars blinked over their quiet street, holding both promise and uncertainty. Morning came with a golden glow across the driveway. Lisa stood with her parents, her new backpack gripped tightly. Got your lunch? Nina asked, brushing her daughter's hair. Lisa nodded. And my notebook and pencils. Then you're all set, champ, Malcolm said, kneeling down. Remember what we talked about? Lisa grew serious. Be myself. Be kind. And if anything makes me uncomfortable, tell a teacher or you guys. That's my girl, he said proudly. Then came the sound. The low rumble of the bus turning the corner. The moment they had both hoped for and feared had arrived. And as Lisa stepped onto that bus, into what should have been a simple ride to school, none of them knew that this was only the beginning of something far more chilling than they had ever imagined. As the bus pulled up, its doors creaked open with a groan that seemed to echo through Nina's chest. A middle-aged white man with graying hair peered down at them. For a brief second, surprise flickered across his face before he quickly replaced it with a flat, polite expression. Good morning, he said, his tone courteous, but not exactly warm. You must be new to the route. Nina nodded with a practiced smile. Yes, we just moved in. This is Lisa. She'll be riding with you. The man gave a short nod. Welcome aboard, Lisa. I'm Mr. Miller. Lisa hesitated at the bottom step, glancing back at her parents. Nina gave her an encouraging nod, and Malcolm leaned down and whispered, You've got this, sweetheart. Taking a breath, Lisa climbed the steps. As she disappeared inside, Nina and Malcolm caught a glimpse of the other children. Most looked curious. A few smiled, but one or two wore expressions that made Nina's stomach twist. The bus pulled away. Hand in hand, the parents stood watching until it rounded the corner and vanished. She'll be fine, Malcolm said, giving Nina's hand a gentle squeeze. But his voice held a note of doubt that matched the unease growing in Nina's heart. The day dragged on. Nina tried to focus on setting up her home office, but her mind kept drifting back to Lisa. Was she making friends? Were the teachers kind? Was she being treated differently? When the time came for Lisa to return, Nina paced by the window, unable to sit still. The familiar rumble of the bus engine made her rush to the door. Lisa came bounding down the steps, her backpack bouncing. Nina's heart lifted when she saw her daughter's beaming face. "Hi, Mom," Lisa called, waving as she ran up the driveway. "Hi, sweetie." "How was your first day?" Nina asked, scooping her into a hug. Lisa glowed with excitement as she chatted about her nice teacher, the girl she sat with at lunch, and how cool the playground was. Relief swept over Nina. Maybe things really would be okay. That night around the dinner table, Lisa continued her animated retelling. Malcolm, home from his first day at the new job, laughed at her stories and asked questions between bites. But just as the conversation quieted, Lisa suddenly said, "Our bus driver is rude." Nina and Malcolm exchanged quick glances. "What do you mean, honey?" Nina asked gently. Lisa shrugged and grew quiet. "He just says mean things sometimes," she mumbled, then quickly changed the subject, asking Malcolm about his office. Nina caught Malcolm's eyes over Lisa's head. The concern was mirrored in his face, but neither pushed further. They didn't want to ruin Lisa's otherwise happy first day. Later that night, as they got ready for bed, Malcolm brought it up again. "What do you think she meant about the bus driver?" Nina sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I don't know. Maybe he's just gruff. But it could be something." Malcolm finished. "Should we ask her more?" Nina shook her head. "Not yet. Let's wait a few days. We don't want to make her anxious if it's nothing." Malcolm agreed, but the worry in his furrowed brow mirrored the knot tightening in Nina's chest. She stared at the ceiling for hours, Lisa's words replaying in her mind. "He just says mean things sometimes." What kind of mean things? Why wouldn't she say more? In the weeks that followed, life settled into a routine. Malcolm left early for work in the city. Nina adjusted to her home office. Lisa continued to ride the bus. On the surface, things looked normal. But Nina noticed subtle changes. Lisa, once bubbly and talkative, now gave clipped, vague answers about her day. One afternoon, Nina found her sitting quietly by the window, staring out at nothing. "Lisa," she said gently. Lisa jumped, slightly startled. "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine," she answered, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Nina sat beside her, stroking her hair. "You know you can tell me anything, right? If something's bothering you at school or with friends, or..." She trailed off, hoping Lisa would open up. But Lisa just nodded and leaned against her without saying a word. That evening, while Malcolm worked late, Nina decided to try again. Sitting with Lisa on the couch, she asked about her day, keeping it casual. When Lisa gave the usual short answers, Nina brought up the bus driver. "Remember when you said Mr. Miller says mean things? Has that happened again?" Lisa stiffened. Her small hands fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. "It's nothing, Mommy," she said, but her voice wavered. Her eyes darted to the corners of the room like she was afraid someone might be listening. Nina's heart ached. "Lisa," she said softly, cupping her daughter's face. "If someone's being mean to you, or if you're scared, you can always tell me. I'm here for you." For a second, Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Her lip trembled. Nina held her breath, hoping. But then, just as quickly, the emotion disappeared. Lisa pulled away and forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mom, really. Can I go play in my room?" Nina nodded slowly as her daughter darted away. Something was wrong. She just didn't know what. When Malcolm got home, Nina told him everything. Lisa's behavior, her concern, and how Lisa had shut down when asked. Malcolm listened, his brow tense as he stirred the pasta sauce. When Nina finished, he let out a long breath. "Nina, I think you're overreacting. Lisa's adjusting. It's a big move. Give it time." "But you haven't seen how different she is," Nina said, frustration flaring. "I really think I've got enough going on at work." Malcolm snapped louder than he meant to. "I don't need this too. Lisa's fine. Don't make this into something it's not." The kitchen fell silent except for the simmering sauce. Nina turned away, stung. She felt dismissed, unheard. Malcolm instantly regretted his tone, but didn't know how to fix it. They finished making dinner in silence. When Lisa joined them at the table, she looked between her parents and sensed something was off. "Is everything okay?" she asked quietly. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Malcolm said, quickly forcing a smile. But the tension lingered in the air, thick and unspoken. And deep down, Nina knew Lisa wasn't fine. None of them truly were. "Was your day okay?" Nina asked, as Lisa began to share a carefully edited version of her school day. Nina pushed her food around on her plate, appetite gone, her thoughts drifting. Across the table, she caught Malcolm's apologetic glance, but she couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. Later that night, they lay in bed, backs turned, the space between them heavy with silence. Nina couldn't sleep. Lisa's words echoed in her mind, each one sharpening the sense that something was wrong. Her maternal instincts were screaming, but Malcolm's dismissal had left her feeling alone, even uncertain. Was she overreacting? Was Lisa just adjusting to a new school, a new life? But if that was true, why did this pit of dread keep tightening in her stomach? Nina tossed and turned, her thoughts spiraling. Mr. Miller, the withdrawn behavior, the way Lisa had slowly stopped sharing the little details that used to tumble from her lips. There had to be a connection, but what? As the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, Nina made a decision. If no one else would take her concerns seriously, she would find out the truth herself. With that resolve, she finally drifted into a fitful sleep, unaware that the days ahead would unravel secrets that could shatter everything. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, reflecting Nina's mood. Malcolm had already left for work, their argument still lingering like smoke. As Lisa boarded the bus, Nina waved with forced calm. But inside, Her mind was racing. Today would be different. Today, she'd act. The moment the bus disappeared around the corner, she grabbed her keys and jacket and rushed to the car, her hands trembling as she turned the ignition. As she pulled out of the driveway, she spotted a neighbor watering her lawn. The woman waved. Nina offered a tight smile, praying her sudden departure didn't raise suspicion. Staying a safe distance behind, she followed the yellow school bus through the neighborhood. Her heart pounded. Was she being paranoid? Was Malcolm right, or was she the only one willing to see what others wouldn't? At each stop, she noticed something strange. Lisa was always the last to board, even when other kids were already waiting. Coincidence or something more? At one stop, she thought she saw Mr. Miller say something to Lisa. Her daughter's shoulders hunched slightly. But from where Nina sat, it was hard to tell if it was real or just her imagination. When the bus finally arrived at the school, Nina parked across the street and gripped the steering wheel watching. Mr. Miller stood by the door, helping the kids off the bus with a smile. When Lisa stepped down, he gave her a friendly pat on the shoulder. To any outsider, he looked kind and professional. So why had Lisa said he was rude? Why did she grow quiet every time he came up? As Nina drove home, she tried to reconcile what she had seen with her gut feeling. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe Lisa was just struggling to adjust. But then again, what if Mr. Miller had seen her car and changed his behavior? Back at home, she tried to focus on work, but her thoughts kept returning to the morning. Something was off. She just couldn't figure out what. Should she tell Malcolm she had followed the bus? Would he understand or just be angry? And Lisa, should she push her daughter to open up or wait? By the time Lisa returned that afternoon, Nina had made up her mind. She wouldn't tell anyone about her stakeout. Not yet. She needed more. "How was school today, sweetie?" she asked as Lisa walked in. "Fine," Lisa mumbled, heading straight for her room. Nina watched her go, the ache in her chest deepening. That night, Nina observed her daughter closely over dinner. Lisa pushed food around her plate, avoided eye contact, shrank slightly when Malcolm asked about her day. After dinner, while Malcolm cleared the table, Nina approached Lisa gently. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly. "Want to watch a movie together?" Lisa hesitated, then nodded. They curled up on the couch. The glow of the screen filled the room. For a while, they sat in silence. Then Nina whispered, "You know I love you, right?" Lisa turned eyes wide with surprise. "I know, Mom. I love you too." Nina pulled her closer. "And you can tell me anything. Anything at all." For a brief moment, something flickered in Lisa's eyes. Fear, sadness, then it vanished, replaced by a tight smile. "I know, Mom," she said, turning back to the movie. Nina sighed inwardly. She hadn't broken through. Not yet. But she would. She had to. That night, as Lisa fell asleep in her arms, Nina made a silent promise. She would get to the bottom of this, with or without Malcolm's support. She would uncover the truth about Mr. Miller and those bus rides. And she would protect her daughter no matter what it took. But Nina couldn't have predicted just how deep the truth would run, or how far-reaching the consequences would be. The following afternoon, Nina found herself at the local park absently watching Lisa play on the swings. Her mind churned with everything she had seen and still didn't understand. She was so lost in thought that a voice made her jump. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Nina looked up to see a middle-aged white woman smiling at her, the neighbor from down the street. "Mind if I join you?" the woman asked, gesturing to the bench. "Of course not," Nina replied, forcing a smile. "Please." The woman sat beside her, and for a few minutes they chatted casually about the weather, the neighborhood, the challenges of moving. Nina felt herself relax slightly, grateful for the warmth. "I'm Sarah, by the way," the woman said, extending her hand. "I think we're just a few houses down." "I'm Nina," she replied, shaking her hand. "It's nice to meet you properly." As they spoke, Nina realized this might be her chance. A fresh perspective. Someone from the community. Maybe even someone who could confirm or dispel her fears. Steeling herself, Nina decided it was time to ask the question that had been burning in her chest for weeks. The question had been burning in Nina's chest for days, and now with Sarah sitting beside her, it finally found its way to the surface. "Sarah," she began hesitantly, "can I ask you something? It's about the school bus driver, Mr. Miller." Sarah raised her eyebrows slightly, but nodded, her expression curious. "Of course. What about him?" Nina took a deep breath, carefully choosing her words. "My daughter Lisa mentioned that the bus driver can be rude. I've just been a little concerned about how he treats the kids. I was wondering if you'd heard anything similar from other parents or your own children." The change in Sarah's demeanor was instant and jarring. Her warm smile vanished, replaced by a hard, angry glare that made Nina flinch. "How dare you, Sarah?" hissed her voice, low and sharp with venom. "How dare you accuse Mr. Miller of anything? He's been driving our kids for decades. He's a good man." Nina's mouth opened and closed, stunned into silence. But Sarah wasn't finished. Her voice rose sharp and bitter. "You just got here, and already you're stirring up trouble. You think you run things now. If you don't like it, maybe you should leave. Honestly, I think you'd be doing us all a favor." The words hit Nina like a slap. The racism thinly veiled beneath Sarah's rage was unmistakable. She had expected some neighbors might be wary of newcomers, but this hostility was beyond anything she had imagined. I'm sorry," Nina stammered, standing shakily. "I didn't mean to offend anyone. I was just concerned about my daughter." Sarah stood to, her eyes cold. "Maybe you should teach your daughter to respect adults instead of lying about good people." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Nina frozen on the bench. Across the playground, Lisa had stopped swinging and was watching with wide, worried eyes. Nina forced herself to smile, waving as if nothing had happened. But inside, she was reeling. As they walked home, hand in hand, her thoughts churned. If Sarah's reaction was any indication of how the neighborhood felt, what hope did Lisa have if she ever needed to speak up? Would anyone believe her? That night, after tucking Lisa into bed, Nina sat alone in the living room, her mind replaying every word of the confrontation. She hadn't told Malcolm she couldn't. She didn't want to see the disappointment on his face or hear him say, "I told you so." But now more than ever, Nina was convinced something was deeply wrong. Sarah's outburst hadn't silenced her, it had steeled her resolve. If no one else would help, she'd figure it out herself. She'd watch, listen, collect proof. And when she had enough, she would confront everyone who stood in her way. What Nina didn't know was that the truth she was chasing would soon come crashing into their lives, far sooner and far more violently than she could have ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, the house was quiet and tense. Nina and Malcolm watched Lisa, closely hyper-aware of every word and movement. But surprisingly, Lisa seemed better. The shadows that had lingered behind her eyes began to lift. She talked more, shared stories about school, even laughed again. Nina started to wonder if maybe she had been wrong. Maybe Lisa had just needed time to adjust. The thought brought relief and guilt. Had she really been ready to turn their lives upside down based on a hunch? Then, one crisp autumn afternoon, Nina sat at her desk, working on a design project, the soft clicking of her keyboard the only sound in the house. A breeze rustled the leaves outside. At a glance, the clock showed it was nearly time for Lisa's return. Smiling, Nina moved to the kitchen to prepare a snack, apples and peanut butter, just like always. She hummed softly as she arranged the plate on the counter. For the first time in weeks, things felt normal. 4 o'clock came and went. Nina wasn't worried. The bus was often a few minutes late, but by 4:15, unease crept in. She went to the front window, peering out at the empty street. Still no bus. By 4:30, she was pacing. She called Malcolm, her voice tight. "I'm sure it's nothing," she said quickly, trying to sound calm. "Maybe the bus broke down. But I'm getting worried." Malcolm's voice was strained. "I'm leaving work. Call the school. I'll be home soon." Nina hung up and dialed the school. Her voice trembled as she explained Lisa hadn't arrived home. The receptionist was kind but unhelpful. "All buses have returned to the depot," she said. "If your daughter doesn't turn up soon, I'd suggest calling the police." Call the police? Nina's heart dropped. How had this become a nightmare? Malcolm arrived to find her in tears, frantically calling the bus depot. They clung to each other, terrified. "This is all my fault," Nina sobbed. "I knew something was wrong. I should have known." Malcolm interrupted, holding her tightly. "This is not your fault. We'll find her. She has to be somewhere." Just as Nina reached for her keys to start searching the neighborhood, the front door creaked open. Time stopped. They turned slowly. And there stood Lisa, 2 hours late. Her yellow skirt wrinkled, her pink shirt stained, her backpack slung crookedly over one shoulder. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and unfocused. She stepped inside without a word, and suddenly the quiet house erupted into motion. Nina rushed to her, pulling her into a crushing embrace as Malcolm dropped to his knees beside them. But even as they held their daughter grateful beyond words, one truth settled coldly in Nina's chest. Something had happened. Something serious. And it was only a matter of time before they learned exactly what. Lisa's shirt was askew, her neat braids frayed and uneven, as if she'd been in a struggle. Nina rushed forward, wrapping her arms tightly around her daughter. "Where have you been? We were so worried," she cried, her voice a mix of relief and raw panic. Malcolm joined them, encircling both Nina and Lisa in his arms. For a long moment, the three of them stood like that, entwined, trembling, shaken. The agony of the past 2 hours gave way to overwhelming relief. But as Nina pulled back to get a closer look at Lisa, her heart nearly stopped. Her daughter's face was pale, her eyes glassy and full of unshed tears. She was trembling, and in her expression was something that sent a chill down Nina's spine, a haunting blend of fear, shame, and something deeper she couldn't yet name. "Lisa, sweetheart," she said gently, cupping her daughter's face. "What happened? Where were you?" Lisa's lower lip quivered. Her voice was barely a whisper when she finally spoke the words that would shatter the fragile peace they thought they'd found the bus driver. "He did it again." The air left the room in an instant. Nina and Malcolm stared at each other, horrified, as the weight of Lisa's words sank in. All of Nina's fears, all her suspicions, came crashing down in that moment. She had been right. Something had been wrong all along. But now, it was clear that the truth was far worse than she'd ever imagined. They led Lisa to the couch, sitting on either side of her, creating a protective barrier. Malcolm gently took her hand. Nina rubbed her back soothingly. "Sweetheart," Nina said softly, "we need you to tell us everything." "What do you mean, he did it again?" "What has Mr. Miller been doing?" Lisa hesitated, her small frame trembling. Her eyes moved from Nina to Malcolm, then down to her hands. Finally she spoke. "Mr. Miller. He doesn't like me," she said, her voice shaking. "He doesn't like our kind." Nina and Malcolm exchanged a pained glance, their worst fears taking shape. Malcolm squeezed Lisa's hand gently. "Go on," he urged. Lisa took a deep breath. The words spilled out slowly, but once they began, they didn't stop. She told them everything. Mr. Miller had been making passive-aggressive racist remarks since her first week, whispering cruel things under his breath, muttering that some people don't belong here. When I said he was rude before, Lisa added, her voice growing stronger, I didn't know how to explain it. I thought maybe I was imagining things. Nina's heart twisted with guilt. She had felt it, known something was off, but she hadn't pushed hard enough. She hadn't protected Lisa from this. But nothing could have prepared them for what came next. This wasn't the first time he left me somewhere, Lisa whispered. About a month ago, he dropped me off on a road. I didn't know where I was. He said, if I told anyone, I'd regret it. That no one would believe me anyway, because of the color of my skin. Nina let out a broken sob and pulled Lisa tightly into her arms, holding her as if her love alone could erase the trauma. Malcolm stood abruptly, pacing, fists clenched in helpless rage. And today, Nina asked, her voice trembling, "What happened today, A?" Lisa sniffled. He did it again. He stopped the bus, told me to get out, said I didn't belong. I was so scared, Mommy. I didn't know where I was. I walked for a long time. I didn't know who to ask for help. He told me if I told anyone, he'd make us leave. That everyone would hate us. Malcolm knelt in front of Lisa, his hands gently cradling hers. Listen to me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. What he did is wrong. Very, very wrong. And none of it is your fault. Do you hear me, baby? Not a single bit. Lisa nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, she whispered. Oh, baby, Nina said, hugging her tighter. You don't have to be sorry. You were so brave to tell us now. We are so proud of you. As Lisa's story wound down, her energy faded, her body slumping with exhaustion. Nina and Malcolm exchanged a look, firm, resolute. They knew what had to be done. Lisa, Malcolm said gently, we need to call the police. What Mr. Miller did, it's not just wrong, it's criminal. We need to make sure he never hurts you or anyone else again. Lisa's eyes widened in fear. But what if they don't believe me? What if he was right? Nina gently cupped her daughter's cheeks. We believe you. And we'll make sure they believe you too. No one will hurt you again, I promise. Malcolm reached for the phone. As he dialed 911, Nina held Lisa close, her mind racing. She thought of Sarah's venomous response in the park. The neighbors' stares. Would the police believe them? Would the system protect them or turn against them? But then she looked at Lisa's tear-streaked face and knew they had no choice. They had to fight, not just for Lisa, but for every child like her. They had to speak no matter the cost. Moments later, the wail of sirens grew louder, then stopped outside. The doorbell rang. Malcolm opened it to find two officers on the porch, a tall, middle-aged white man and a younger black woman. Good evening, sir, the man said. I'm Officer Thompson. This is my partner, Officer Brooks. We received a call about a missing child. Yes, Malcolm said, stepping aside. That was us. Our daughter is home now, but we need to report something serious. The officers entered. Nina rose from the couch, still holding Lisa protectively. Officer Brooks knelt to her level. Hi there, sweetheart. You must be Lisa. I'm so glad you're safe. Is it okay if we ask you a few questions? Lisa hesitated, then nodded, still clutching Nina's hand. Over the next hour, Nina and Malcolm relived the nightmare, recounting Lisa's words, her fear, the threats she'd endured. Officer Thompson took notes, his face unreadable. Officer Brooks spoke softly to Lisa, coaxing details from her, gently, patiently, like someone who had seen too much, but still cared deeply. And as the story spilled into the open, finally, painfully, Nina realized this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a long, painful road to justice. But they were no longer walking it in silence. Together, they would fight. Together, they would stand. And together, they would make sure Lisa's voice was heard. As Lisa finished her story, the room fell into a heavy silence. Officer Thompson cleared his throat, his voice measured. "That's quite an accusation," he said carefully. "Mr. Miller has been a respected member of this community for decades." Nina felt her chest tighten with rage. "Are you saying you don't believe our daughter?" she demanded, her voice sharp with fury. Before the tension could escalate, Officer Brooks stepped in quickly, her tone calm but firm. "What my partner means is we need to conduct a thorough investigation. These are serious allegations, and we have to handle them with care." Malcolm, who had remained quiet until then, finally spoke, his voice steady but edged with emotion. "We understand that. But our daughter has been traumatized. We need to know you're taking this seriously." Officer Thompson nodded, though his expression remained unreadable. "We'll need to speak with Mr. Miller directly. And if there are any witnesses, other children who may have seen or heard anything, that will help." Lisa shook her head. Tears brimmed again. "He always made sure I was the last one on the bus," she whispered. Nina felt her heart fracture. How had they not noticed sooner? As the officers prepared to leave, Nina made a firm decision. "We want to go with you," she said. "When you talk to Mr. Miller, we want to be there." Officer Thompson looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, that's not really protocol." "I don't care about protocol," Nina cut in. "This is our daughter. We're not sitting on the sidelines." After a beat, Officer Brooks nodded. "You can come, but you'll need to stay in the car while we speak with him." The drive through the neighborhood was surreal. Mr. Miller lived just 2 streets away, a fact that had once felt convenient now seemed like a quiet threat. They pulled up in front of a tidy 2-story home with a well-kept lawn. Nina's stomach churned at the sight of it. How could someone who caused so much harm live in a house that looked so normal? From the car, they watched Mr. Miller answer the door. His face shifted from polite confusion to defensive tension as the officers spoke. After several long minutes, the officers returned. Officer Thompson's face was grim. He denies everything he said flatly. Claims he's never mistreated a child. Says he doesn't even remember Lisa specifically. Nina's chest tightened again. Was this how it would end? With their daughter's truth pushed aside. But then a voice rang out from across the street. "Wait." A woman jogged toward them, breathless. "I need to talk to you." Nina blinked, stunned. She recognized the woman, another mother from the neighborhood, one of the only other black families in the area. "I overheard what's going on," the woman said, glancing toward the house. "And I need you to know She's not lying. We experienced something similar with our kids. My husband and I. We just started driving them ourselves. We were too scared to speak up. Hope surged in Nina's chest. The officer's expressions shifted. Officer Thompson's skepticism faded into concern. Officer Brooks stepped forward, her eyes sharp with new resolve. "Ma'am, we'll need an official statement. This changes things significantly." As the woman nodded, Nina met her eyes. In that look was something unspoken, but deeply understood, the quiet terror of wanting to protect your children in a world that often doesn't protect them back. What followed was a blur. More officers arrived. Mr. Miller was taken in for questioning. Other families, emboldened by what had happened, came forward with their own stories. Some whispered, some angry, but all validating what Lisa had endured. By the time the sun rose, Nina stood on her front porch and watched Mr. Miller being led away in handcuffs. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. Relief, yes. Vindication. But also sorrow for what her daughter had suffered and for the world that allowed it to happen. Malcolm wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "It's over," he said quietly. Nina shook her head. "No, it's just beginning." Her voice held quiet determination. "We've got work to do. This can't happen again, not to Lisa. Not to anyone's child." Inside, Lisa slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. And Nina knew they had done the hardest thing. They had spoken up, stood their ground, and in doing so, they hadn't just protected Lisa. They had ignited something bigger, a movement for truth, for safety, for change. But the road ahead would be difficult. In the days that followed Mr. Miller's arrest, the Johnsons found themselves at the center of a community unraveling. News trucks lined the street. Reporters crowded their front lawn. The quiet neighborhood they had hoped would be a haven was now a battleground of divided opinions and simmering tension. Mom Lisa's voice came from behind her. "Are those people gonna be out there all day?" Nina turned from the window and offered a gentle smile. "Don't worry about them, sweetheart. They'll be gone soon." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. Headlines blared, "Racist bus driver terrorizes black child." The media turned their pain into sound bites, their trauma into clickbait. Malcolm entered the room face tense. "Just got off the phone with the lawyer," he said. "They're moving forward with the case. They want Lisa to testify." Nina's heart clenched. The thought of her little girl reliving all that in a courtroom full of strangers made her sick. "We'll cross that bridge when we get to it," she said. "For now, we focus on healing." But healing wasn't easy. Not for them. Not for the community. More parents began sharing their own experiences of discrimination, of silencing of fear. What had happened to Lisa wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of something deeper. The school board called an emergency meeting. Nina and Malcolm attended along with dozens of other parents. The tension was thick. Some called for reform. Others accused them of overreacting. "This is just one bad apple," someone argued. Nina stood up. Her voice, though steady, cut through the room like a blade. This isn't about one person or one incident, she said. This is about a system that let this happen, a culture that keeps families silent and children afraid. And for the first time since moving into that quiet suburban street, every eye turned to her and listened, creating a community where all our children feel safe and valued means looking at the bigger picture, Nina said, her voice strong, at the biases and prejudices that allowed this to happen in the first place. Her words struck a chord. In the days that followed, a group of parents, black, white, and everything in between, came together to form a diversity and inclusion committee. They worked tirelessly on proposals for cultural sensitivity training, more inclusive hiring practices, and a safer, more transparent system for reporting and addressing concerns. Small changes began to ripple through the school district, real lasting change. At home, Nina and Malcolm focused on what mattered most, helping Lisa heal. They found a therapist who specialized in childhood racial trauma. Slowly, day by day, they began to see glimmers of their daughter's old self. The vibrant, confident light in her eyes started to return. One quiet afternoon, as Nina helped Lisa with her homework, a knock came at the door. She opened it and froze. Standing there was Sarah, the neighbor who had once lashed out at her in the park, her expression heavy with guilt. I owe you an apology, Sarah said, eyes lowered. I was wrong to dismiss your concerns. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Nina was taken aback. Part of her wanted to close the door to protect herself and her family from the pain. But then, she thought of Lisa and the future they were trying to build. Thank you for saying that, Nina replied quietly. It means a lot. It was a small step, but a meaningful one. As weeks turned into months, more steps followed. The school installed cameras on all buses. They launched a new anonymous reporting system for both students and parents. They listened and acted. Mr. Miller's trial came and went. Multiple families testified. The evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted and sentenced. On the day the verdict was announced, Nina held Lisa close. You did it, baby, she whispered. You were so brave. And now he can't hurt anyone else. Lisa looked up, her smile soft but proud. We did it, Mom. All of us, together. Spring came, filling the neighborhood with the scent of fresh flowers and the sound of children's laughter. One sunny morning, Nina stood on her porch and watched as Lisa climbed onto the school bus. The new driver, a warm-faced woman of color, greeted every child with a smile that felt genuine and kind. Lisa turned, waved, and called out, "Bye, Mom," before sitting beside a diverse group of friends, her voice light and happy as she chatted. Nina waved back, her heart full. They had faced darkness and emerged stronger. They had turned pain into purpose, fear into action, silence into a voice that refused to be ignored. And in doing so, they had shown Lisa and the entire community the power of standing up for what is right, no matter how difficult the path. As the bus pulled away, Nina breathed in the crisp spring air. She knew there would be more work to do. the journey toward true inclusivity was far from over. But for now, in this moment, there was hope. Hope for Lisa, hope for their family, and hope for a future where every child feels safe, seen, and at home. Thank you for joining us on this journey of courage and transformation. If the Johnson family story moved you, I've handpicked another heartfelt tale you won't want to miss. Click here to watch it now and keep the light of compassion burning. Thank you for choosing my video among thousands of videos out there to watch. Helping me with a subscription of yours is very small but very big and too valuable.